Have you ever wondered why some people who seem, well, let's just say, less academically inclined than you, end up making a boatload more money? Or how about folks like Kim Kardashian or popular TikTokers who seem to be raking in millions while you're grinding away at your 9-to-5? It's a question that's probably crossed your mind, and honestly, it used to baffle me too. I grew up with this idea that you had to be the smartest person in the room to get rich. If that were truly the case, every PhD candidate would probably own a private jet, and someone like Richard Branson, who famously dropped out of school at 15, would be flipping burgers at a fast food joint. But that's just not the reality. The wealthiest people in the world aren't necessarily smarter than you or me. In fact, research shows that the average college GPA for a millionaire in the US is around 2.9 out of 5. That's not failing, but it's not exactly a straight average either. And some studies even suggest that those who earned the most money actually scored lower on intelligence tests than those who earned less. So, getting rich these days isn't just about being smart. It comes down to a few key things. The confidence of not knowing, the Dunning-Kruger effect. Let's talk about the Dunning-Kruger effect. It's a psychological bias where people who know very little about a subject often overestimate their knowledge. Think about it. Do you consider yourself an above-average driver? I bet you a fancy cup of coffee you just said yes. Studies consistently show that around 93% of Americans rate themselves as better than average at driving. Statistically, that's impossible. We can't all be above average. But that's the Dunning-Kruger effect in action. Our brains work hard to convince us we're more competent than we are. And here's the ironic twist. The dumber someone is, the more they often believe they can succeed in what they do. This leads to a surge in confidence, and suddenly, they might decide to start a YouTube channel about personal finance, grow it into a massive media business, and before you know it, they're helping millions of people make smarter money moves. Sound familiar? That's kind of how my journey started. On the flip side, most smart people, the moment they even consider a big endeavor like this, will dive headfirst into research. They'll have 30 tabs open, meticulously analyzing every possible approach for weeks. The result? Analysis paralysis. You spend so much time thinking about doing something that you get completely paralyzed from actually making progress. The point is, those who are less smart often don't know what they don't know. This gives them a naive confidence that propels them to believe in themselves, take the first step, and actually start. But most smart people want to ensure they have all the information, the best strategy, and the perfect plan, which leads to overthinking, second-guessing, and ultimately, doing nothing. Your misunderstanding of risk, a case study. This brings me to the second reason smart people often miss out on getting rich. They have the wrong understanding of risk. This is something I've seen firsthand. After college, my first job was in finance. A solid 90% of my colleagues were Ivy League graduates, top of their class, incredibly academically smart people. When we talk about how much our jobs sucked or how much we hated them, and then we'd start brainstorming quitting and starting our own companies, almost all of them would enthusiastically say, "Yeah, I'm down." We'd spend hours talking about entrepreneurship, business ideas, you name it. And this wasn't just a one-time thing. These conversations would span weeks. What truly blew my mind was when I'd check in with them a month or two later, and they hadn't done a single thing to try and reach their goals, despite all those excited conversations. Now that I've been in the entrepreneurship space for a few years, meeting incredible people ranging from those just starting a new business to those who have raised tens of millions of dollars, I've noticed a pattern. Many of them either never went to college or, if they did, they attended less well-known schools. It's not just my anecdotal experience either. Research has found that while people with higher cognitive scores were more willing to take risks in a controlled environment, that boldness pretty much vanished when real money was on the line. If you think about it, it makes sense. Back in the days of hunters and gatherers, it was the smart people who survived. If you heard a rustle in the bushes, the smart hunters would be like, "Nope, that's scary. Let's get out of here." Meanwhile, the less smart hunters who stayed might have, well, become dinner. So, over time, the people who survived were those who overestimated their risk and imagined the worst-case scenario. Fast forward to modern times, and smart people are still instinctively conditioned to take on fewer risks and follow the safe, traditional path. The difference now is that taking a risk, as long as it's not illegal, isn't that serious. Maybe you'll lose some money, maybe you'll lose some time, but you're not going to die or get eaten by a lion. Yet, the fear of some risk is enough for most smart people to stay on the safe path. The bottom line is, those who are less smart tend to underestimate risk, while smart people tend to overestimate it and stick to the conventional route. But if you want to get rich, you can't follow conventional wisdom and expect non-conventional results. The fear of looking foolish. The final reason why less smart people seem to make more money than you is that smart people are scared of looking stupid. This is something I've noticed especially in people who were labeled the smart kid growing up. I was never considered the smartest kid in my class, though I had a lot of smart friends, probably because I looked like a smart nerd. Total catfish. People who grew up being the smart kid receive a lot of external validation from it, and it often becomes their identity. When your self-image is built on being intelligent or always being right, the thought of starting a business and publicly failing is incredibly scary. It feels like it's all downhill from there. In fact, studies show that kids who were praised for being smart were more likely to avoid challenging tasks because they were afraid of failing. This is ironic because if you're smart, you should always want to improve, and you don't get better when things are easy. It's like lifting weights. If you only lift a half-pound dumbbell, you can move your arm all day, but you won't build any new muscle. On the other hand, people who didn't grow up being the smart kid, like me, I was pretty average, don't carry this kind of baggage or burden. People tend to underestimate you and think you'll never achieve much anyway. This does two interesting things. First, it can be a huge motivator because it makes you want to prove everyone wrong. Second, you technically have less to prove and less to lose, so it's all upside from there. 3 things you can do today to get ahead financially. So, keeping all these reasons in mind, what can you do if you're smart and want to get rich without getting left behind? 1. Embrace AB+ mentality. Imagine 2 people at the bottom of a mountain, a smart person and a less smart person. Before taking even a single step, the smart person is going to sit down, pull out a map, weather instruments, climbing manuals, the whole shebang. Meanwhile, the less smart person is just going to start climbing. Maybe they'll go the wrong way, maybe they'll make a mistake, maybe they'll slip a few times. But every time they mess up, they're going to get back up and keep going. In the end, even though the less smart person messed up a lot, they're the first one to make it to the top, while the smart person is still at the bottom, making sure they're wearing the right hiking boots. If you want to get rich, you need to stop trying to always do A+ work and be okay with doing B+ work. Mistakes are a part of life, and often, they're the best ways to learn. And honestly, there's a solid chance that what you consider B+ work is actually pretty darn good already. At some point, perfection is just another fancy word for procrastination. You don't get better by thinking about doing something. You get better by doing it. Each imperfect action you take teaches you something you couldn't have learned otherwise, and all these small improvements eventually compound into expertise and success. 2. Find and use your comparative advantage. Now, I know this might seem like a different direction, but the truth is, not everyone should be an entrepreneur. What I've noticed is that it takes a very specific personality, but that doesn't mean you can't get rich without being an entrepreneur. Part of financial success is finding out what you can do better than the average person, or better than most people, and then truly focusing on doing that thing. For example, a really talented plumber who's well known throughout the city can earn way more money than a lawyer who's terrible at their job. Sometimes it can be tough to figure out what you're good at, especially if you've been doing something else for a very long time. An easy way to find that out is to check out assessments like Gallup's Clifton Strengths Assessment or Via's Character Strengths Assessment. Both are pretty comprehensive, and the results can be eye-opening. The point is, if you go down a career path that doesn't align with your strengths, and you do it just because you feel like you're supposed to due to prestige, stability, or money, then you're going to underperform compared to other people and never reach your full potential. 3. Avoid that heavier weight. This is something that really helped me make the leap from corporate America to starting my own business. It's realizing that no matter which of 2 choices you make, it's probably going to suck a little. For example, I hated my job, and I felt like I was going nowhere. If I stayed, I would experience the pain of staying where I was. On the other hand, if I left and did my own thing, I would experience the pain of going into the unknown, potentially failing, and looking stupid or getting judged by my friends and family. So, I had 2 choices, and either choice would lead to some sort of pain. How did I figure out which choice to make? For me, I tried to imagine my life 5, 10, or 15 years from now and see which pain would hurt the most. I realized that the pain of staying where I was and not doing anything would be far greater for me than if I forced myself to get out of my comfort zone and take the jump. The point is, even if you have the tiniest inkling of wanting to do more, give it a try. Because the absolute worst thing that can happen is you fail, and then you end up in the exact same spot you are in right now. What's holding you back from taking that first and perfect step toward your financial goals?